Good evening. Welcome to the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education recognition of newly tenured staff and the annual recognition of National Principals Month. Mr. Jones, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bauer? Here. Mrs. Boroff? Here. Ms. Brody? Here. Mrs. Mitchell? Here. Ms. Suriani? Here. Ms. Williams? Here. Ms. Winkler? Here. Mr. Murray? Here. Dr. Kolkowski?
Here. Quorum is present. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Please join me in the salute to the flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's an exciting evening. I'm so very happy and proud for all of those receiving tenure tonight. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Joan Mast, Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Kolkowski. So tonight we are celebrating tenure, and we know that tenure is a milestone in your journey as an SPF educator. Your work every day makes a significant difference in the lives of our students and our families. Our schools are a hub of the community where all of our children come to learn because of your commitment and your expertise. Your work is vital to our nation's future successes. Thank you for sharing your gifts each and every day. I would like to now call up Kyle Karizak to address the group.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Karizak. I'm a junior and the class of 2024 Student Council President at Scotch Plains Fanwood High School, and I would like to speak on behalf of all the students in the district. All of the students who have grown to understand the world around them better, all of the students who have been inspired to change the world because of teachers, and say thank you. Thank you for making our futures not only your career, but your passion. Thank you for taking the time each day to give us the knowledge and the opportunity to achieve our dreams and succeed. We are here to honor your years of hard work in creating the next generation and to recognize your contribution to making a better Scotch Plains Fanwood community. Because without you, there would be no spread of knowledge, or advancements in technology. Everything would stop without teachers. But through your hard work and dedication, society is able to solve problems, and each individual is taught how to be the best person they can be. While your work isn't easy, it is incredibly vital to the Scotch Plains Fanwood's continued success in the present and future. So again, thank you, not only for your dedication to our futures, but for never giving up on us.
And now I'd like to invite Jada Mcgarry up. Jada is our new student representative to the board.
Hello, everyone. So first and foremost, I would love to extend my congratulations to all the educators and staff receiving tenure tonight. And as Dr. Mass introduced me, my name is Jada Mcgarry. I'm a senior at Scotch Plains Fanwood High School, and I've been a student in the Scotch Plains Fanwood district since first grade. So all the educators, or some of the educators here, have seen me on my journey from Evergreen all the way up to the high school. And two tenure recipients tonight have impacted my life, so Mr. C and Miss Broadbent. Formerly Park Middle School, but now Nettingham, Mr. C was my 8th grade English teacher. I have many fond memories of how creative and interactive his class was, so from the bottom of my heart, please, congratulations. I met Miss Broadbent more recently while working with the board office on the convocation. She just brings so much positive energy and joy into her position, and it was such a pleasure having her guidance, so congratulations. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Dr. Bortnick up, principal of Brunner Elementary School.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations to all those receiving tenure. And thank you to all the families who share your loved ones with us and allow us to do the great work that we do every day. So thanks to the families that are here to celebrate tenure as well. At this time, I'd like to ask Miss Jacqueline Farley to please join me up on near the stage. And maybe a little Farley, too. Mrs. Farley is a wonderfully patient, positive, engaging, and fun teacher. So basically, she's the perfect kindergarten teacher. Mrs. Farley's classroom is a place of respect, belonging, compassion, singing, dancing, and laughter. So basically, her room is the perfect kindergarten classroom. It's for these reasons and countless many more that I am grateful to work with and learn from Jacqueline Farley every day, and I'm so happy for her and her family to celebrate her tenure. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Jermaine Lykin to please join me. Mr. Lykin, or as we call him around Brunner, Mr. Germain, is a custodian at Brunner and is always willing to help. Mr. Germain helps with lunches, classroom cleaning, maintenance in the classrooms, and probably a million other things at Brunner School. Mr. Germain's positivity and good nature are greatly appreciated by the staff, who know that their urgency will become Germain's priority pretty much all day long, right? Mr. Germain's been a wonderful addition to Brunner these last few years, and we are all certainly grateful to have him on the team. Congratulations, Germain. All right, at this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Brianna Tufaro to please join me. So I've had the good fortune to know Brianna for many years. Although this is her first year at Brunner School, I was happy to be part of the team that interviewed Mrs. Tufaro when she applied for positions in the district 4 years ago. I had the bad luck of losing out in those rounds of interviews to Cole's School, where Mrs. Tufaro became a part-time at the time, and then eventually full-time, special education teacher. So my loss was definitely Cole's gain. And Mrs. Tufaro worked as a special education teacher. I was able to observe her in those classrooms, which was a great privilege for me and just reminded me of how I had lost out. But I saw her as warm, funny, caring, and committed to all kids, but certainly to those that needed her help the most. Now that I do have the good fortune of having Mrs. Tufaro at Brunner as a general education teacher, I see those same qualities every day, especially with certain friends who definitely need her compassion and love the most. And for that, their families and I are extremely grateful. So it's really been great to welcome Brianna to Brunner, but maybe also in some ways back to Brunner, because Brianna is a former Brunner Beaver. So when we say Brunner forever, we truly mean Brunner forever. So congratulations, Brianna.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Every year, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to introduce my next colleague, so I'd like to introduce Mrs. Sandy Fady, our wonderful new principal at Cole's School. I caught myself that time.
Thank you all. I'm so honored to be part of this tradition and have to follow the ranks of Dr. Bortnick, but I do want to bring up my first person, also a kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Jana Apostadero. Mrs. Apostadero truly exemplifies the characteristics of a kindergarten teacher. She has an incredible amount of energy. By the way, she's pregnant, not that you can tell, and still has an incredible amount of energy. She's organized, highly organized, and connects with each of her students. Mrs. Apostadero is patient with her students while also encouraging them to grow and learn. Mrs. Apostadero's lessons are a true example of learning through play and exploration, creating engagement and excitement in her students. She brings out the best in each of her students and is a true asset to our kindergarten team. Thank you, Mrs. Apostadero, for all that you do for our young learners, and congratulations on your tenure. And I'd like to welcome up Mrs. Melissa Chichester. Oh my goodness, thank goodness for Mrs. Chichester as a new administrator. Let me just tell you. Mrs. Chichester is the queen of scheduling. She's a whiz at covering lunch and recess, as those of you know are almost impossible, checking attendance, and making sure everyone has their correct parking spot. Mrs. Chichester greets each staff member and visitor with a smile and a kind word. She's extremely organized and efficient and helps keep the office running smoothly. Mrs. Chichester connects with everyone and makes them all feel special. She is the Coles historian, having worked in the district for many years. As a new administrator in the Scotch Plains Fanwood district, I truly, truly could not make it through the day without her. Thank you, Mrs. Chichester. And now I'd like to welcome up Ms. Erin Mullman, principal of Evergreen.
Good evening, and congratulations to everyone receiving tenure this evening. Rachel Sawyer, would you join me up here? So I have the pleasure to speak about Rachel Sawyer, who is a special education teacher at Evergreen School and has had experience teaching a variety of elementary grade levels and content areas over the course of the last few years and schools. This year, Mrs. Sawyer is primarily working with our second and our fourth grade students for reading, writing, and mathematics. She is a strong and caring teacher who is always going above and beyond to meet the needs of her students. Mrs. Sawyer creates a warm and caring learning environment where students feel supported and ready to learn. Mrs. Sawyer's students said it best when they shared with me that Mrs. Sawyer is kind, thoughtful, and always knows what's best for us. In addition to being a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Sawyer is also a valued member of our Evergreen family. She greets our students with a smiling face each morning at the door and is always offering to help out in any way she can, including lunch and recess duty. No matter what the situation, Mrs. Sawyer always approaches it with patience and kindness. Mrs. Sawyer, we are all grateful to have you part of our Evergreen family and wish you congratulations on your achievement of tenure. And now I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Sasha Slocum from McGinn up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations. I'd like to invite Ms. Alba Gonzalez up front, please. Alba has been a particularly welcome addition to two of our grade level teams at McGinn, in addition to being a beloved staff member to our whole staff. Alba started McGinn as a fourth grade teacher, where she quickly rose to be a strong supporter of her colleagues and a cheerleader for her students. When our sections decreased and she moved to first grade, her colleagues hounded me to keep her there, as her hard work, creative additions to lesson plans, and technological skills and deep love of children and support would be sorely missed. Most importantly, they explained, she is so caring and interested in learning herself. Through the pandemic, Alba aided our whole district with her technical videos to support virtual and hybrid learning. Through her transition to first grade, Alba's positive attitude and enthusiasm for learning something new continued. She is always enthusiastically up for trying new lessons, techniques, grade levels, and ideas for the benefit of our students, making her the ideal teacher to model continuous improvement. McGinn is very fortunate to congratulate Ms. Gonzalez in achieving tenure. And now I'm also thrilled to invite Ms. Muda, Kristen Muda up to the podium. I haven't seen her for a while. I was hoping she'd bring her baby Avery. Great to see you. Kristen Muda came to us from Bridgewater as a leave replacement teacher, where thank goodness they did not have a spot for her. The people I spoke to her were upset about that too. Kristen is a special education teacher who has taught both pull-out resource and in-class resource classes every year since she started at Begin. She has soaked in as much information as possible. Kristen is thoughtful about her instructional choices, clear and kind with her students, and creative in how she displays information and learning activities. Kristen always provides choices for students to express themselves that make it possible for them to show their intelligences in different ways. She gives power to her students, and they can't wait to get to her classes throughout the day. Kristen challenges her students with the respect they deserve, which makes them feel safe, cared for, and eager to learn. She is also a collaborative colleague and outstanding co-teacher. Our teachers and staff are thrilled Mrs. Muda is achieving tenure, and we wish her congratulations. And now I would like to invite my colleague up, Mr. Justin Fiore.
I'd like to ask Lori Ladovsky to please join me up front. So there is not enough time in this meeting for me to share all of the wonderful things about School 1's Student Assistant Specialist, Lori Ladovsky. Our school simply would not be the same without her. Her impact on our school community is evident each and every day. She spends most of her day working with students, meeting with teachers, and talking to families, constantly doing anything she can to support our school community. She works so hard that she has to be routinely reminded to take a few minutes to break for lunch. School 1 was a wonderful school prior to Lori starting there, but we have reached new heights with her guidance, support, wisdom, and care. I can't think of anyone who is more deserving of receiving tenure than Mrs. Lori Ladovsky, and I congratulate her on this occasion. I'd like to welcome up Dr. Jocelyn Dumaresque, Principal of Nettingham.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations to everyone receiving tenure tonight. I have the pleasure of talking about 4 incredible educators. I would like to first welcome Ms. Amy Kokot. Ms. Amy Kokot is one of our special education teachers here at Nettingham, focusing on language arts. Amy can truly do it all in terms of special education. We have asked her to do a little bit of everything here at Nettingham in her now, I believe, 5 years, because she began as a leave replacement teacher with us. She has done co-teaching, pull-out replacement, LLD classes. She takes on new students. She takes on new challenges with incredible flexibility and patience. She often works with our new 5th grade students who have to make the enormous leap into 5th grade and into Nettingham and middle school. It's a huge change for our youngest learners, and she definitely manages what we like to call unexpected behaviors. And we all know what that is, with the utmost patience. For kids who are having a tough day, she is their supportive presence. As she helps these students transition both emotionally and behaviorally, she always keeps their learning first, and she helps them make enormous progress each year. Thank you, Ms. Kokot. And now I'd like to welcome up Ms. Emily Phillips. Emily Phillips is a 6th grade language arts and writing workshop teacher at Nettingham. She works in between 2 of our teams, which means that she has to collaborate with double the amount of teachers. She does this completely masterfully, often taking on a leadership role and organizing really beautiful planning meetings, which I've had the pleasure of being a part of. Her lessons and units are impeccably organized, designed not only to enhance students' reading and writing skills, but also get them to flex their creative muscles. She taps into student interest, and she helps drive engagement through reading and writing in her class. Her conferences in reading and writing are masterful. They're respectful, they're filled with precise feedback, and her students grow leaps and bounds because of her careful attention and supportive discussions. She's truly a benefit to the Language Arts Department and Nettingham in general. Congratulations. And now I'd like to welcome Isabel Rosales. Isabel is is our speech language pathologist at Nettingham, or as we call it, an SLP. There's I think a misconception that speech teachers only work on things like pronunciation or articulation, but Isabel's role in the middle school is that and so much more. Isabel helps our students work on not only articulation and pronunciation, but critically social skills at the middle school. And if you know or love a middle school student, you know this is very important for them. Yes, social skills. She helps students in her sessions make and keep friends. She helps them make good decisions, even though their impulsive brains tell them otherwise. She helps them start discussions, maintain discussions, and truly so much more. She is kind, she is patient, she is professional. She helps her students navigate the complexities of middle school, all while equipping them with real-world skills. She truly changes kids' lives. And for that, we thank you for your time here and congratulate you on tenure. And finally, we'd like to welcome up Mr. Rowell C. Congratulations. I feel like Jada might be able to talk about Mr. C, but I'll have the pleasure if that's okay. Also, 2 Nettingham students, Kyle and Jada, thank you. One runner. Yeah. So Mr. C is one of our language arts teachers in 8th grade at Nettingham. Mr. C is what we like to call a kid magnet, because that means our students are drawn to him, his class, his content, because of the way that he not only engages their minds, but also their hearts. Mr. C is tireless in his pursuit of always wanting to make his classes more interesting and relevant to students. He has expanded our ELA curriculum with book clubs and independent reading choices. He's brought experiential lessons like trials and debates to the students. But most importantly, Mr. C has single-handedly convinced many 13-year-old boys that they actually do like to read. Big deal. But Mr. C is also a confidant for many students who trust him enough to seek him out, to share their feelings and their hopes. We thank him for being an amazing teacher and a human being. Congratulations. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Ralph Girace to speak on behalf of Terrell.
Thank you, Dr. Dumaresque. Good evening. First, I'd like to add to the well-deserved chorus of congratulations to all the newly tenured staff and their families. With regard to specific congratulations on behalf of Dr. Holloway and myself, it's my honor to speak to the achievements of Terrell's newly tenured staff members. So at this time, I'd like to call as a group Aaron Farrell, Megan Soltis, and Jessica Rivas. I'll also be speaking to the accomplishments of Miss Ann Henry, and Miss Jessica Orr. The reason I decided to call them up together is because they exemplify what we have in common as a set of newly tenured staff members, but also as a learning community. So there are certain traits that we honor as a learning community that, again, really are based in this idea of team. And also, it's the way I wrote this speech, so it would be very awkward if I called them up individually right now. So the 5 truly remarkable individuals that I'm going to speak to teach us much about the power of positive example. They have done so by way of hard work, dedication, and care for all who comprise the Terrell learning community. Moreover, in reflecting on what got them to this celebratory juncture, I'm reminded of how Aaron, Ann, Jessica O., Jessica R., and Megan, each in their own valued way, are exemplars of the enduring understandings we seek to foster in our students. It is in this way that they portray lasting truths about what it takes to build successful societies and to achieve beyond our dreams, namely that it takes patience, attention to detail, collegiality, nurtured talent, reasonable flexibility, again, especially at the middle school, in thought and action, initiative and empowerment of self and others. Ms. Farrell has done so through her marvelous work as an integral member of the Special Education Department, always looking out for the student who might be sitting alone at lunch, or by enthusiastically sharing a story about how wonderful a student did on a test. Ms. Henry has done so in her diligence and collaboration in keeping Terrell a sanitized and spotless place worthy to be called a school, even through staff shortages and the pandemic. Ms. Orr has done so through scaffolding for students the next steps in speech improvement, always honing in on the relevance to students' lives and their social, emotional development. Ms. Rivas, also as an integral member of the Special Education Department, has done so through authentic lessons based in 21st century learning concepts that prove memorable for students and observers alike. And Ms. Soltis kept the students singing even through the course of remote and hybrid learning when it seemed like at times there wasn't much worth singing about. However, like you really made it a celebration of learning, one that through the pandemic and to the point where we are now is one where we're enjoying a growing number of in-person harmonious chorus students. So for those and all of your efforts, Aaron, Ann, Jessica, and Megan, we thank you and congratulate you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. At this time, it's my honor to introduce Gita Faria, District Supervisor of Science, Engineering, Gifted and Talented.
Hi, good evening and congratulations to all. At this point, I'd like to call up Ms. Alyssa Bashrimovich. Ms. Alyssa Bashrimovich joined the science department as a chemistry teacher and is currently a physics teacher, after returning back to school earning her physics certification. She continuously looks for opportunities to grow professionally and shares her learning by working collaboratively with other teachers in the department to ensure all students have the best learning experience. Overall, Alyssa has been a great addition to the science department and SPFHS, and we look for her continued success. Congratulations. Next, I would like to call up Mr. Matthew Dr. Duffy. I love it. Mr. Dr. Duffy was an excellent addition to SPFHS. He started as a special education teacher in the science department, where he's taught both ICR classes, POR classes in biology, and even started our first ICR physics course. He taught POR environmental science, ICR environmental science, and really has been a tremendous help to all the teachers with special education needs. He makes every effort to get to know his students, focus on their strengths, build strong teacher-student relationships, which help him to scaffold their learning while maintaining the highest expectations for all students. Additionally, Mr. Dr. Duffy brings a love of STEM to SPFHS and has taken on the role of the robotics advisor, helping to revive the team and bring them to state championship tournament in their first year competing. Because of his love for STEM, I was able to steal him from one department into my other department, and he is currently in our engineering department, and we look forward for his contributions, and congratulations. Finally, I'd like to call up Ms. Anna Segura, formerly known as Ms. Reyes. Ms. Anna Segura is our culinary arts teacher. In her first year at SPFHS, she was pivotal in creating a new course for students who wanted to further pursue their interest in culinary arts. Each year, both of the courses she teaches, Introduction to Foods and Advanced Foods, are very popular among high school students, usually closing out, which provide them with valuable skills and allow them to explore further culinary interests. Whether helping students with recipes that are multicultural, sharing recipes with families during the pandemic, hosting various sets of competitions, of food competitions, it is impossible to not be moved by her infectious enthusiasm for the culinary arts. We are so lucky to have her in our building. Congratulations. At this point, I would like to invite Mr. Donahue up, Assistant Principal at the high school.
I'd like to call up Lisa Cummings. Lisa Cummings is an integral member of the counseling department. As the office assistant for our high school counselors, she manages and maintains each of their schedules in the office as a whole. Throughout the day, there are any number of students and adults who come into our offices wanting to meet with students, wanting to meet with counselors, wanting to meet with colleges, and she does a great job managing and organizing our office in that way. She's a creative problem solver and has worked on a number of departmental projects over the last 4 years. What stands out the most is her ability to connect with everyone. She has been an excellent addition to the culture of the counseling department and treats everyone like family. Lisa is kind, understanding, and works to create a place where people feel welcomed and cared for. She is usually the first person everyone sees when entering the office, and she always finds a way to make everyone feel welcomed and cared for, which is really an important skill in a space where students are coming for social and emotional support. It's been a pleasure to have Lisa as part of this department for the last few years, and we look forward to many more. I'd like to call up Wayne Millett, Supervisor of Arts and Physical Education.
Thank you. I would like to ask Mr. Jeffrey Dreilowitz to come join me at the podium. Dedicated, brilliant, and eerily calm. These are just some of the words that Jeff's colleagues used to describe him. Ever since Jeff Dreilowitz joined the Scotch Plains Fanwood School District, he has been a rock star and earned the respect of students and teachers alike. He came into a strong digital arts program and has nurtured and grown the classes to become some of the most requested classes at the high school. Students feel safe and valued in his class. They know they have a caring, intelligent guide to shepherd them through the wild terrains of Photoshop. Jeff is frequently asked to supply digital art designs for a district project or even help design a student publication. Without fail, he will respond in the affirmative and then go over and above to create artistic renderings that are pleasing to the eye and evoking emotions. One of his colleagues called him a shining star. Jeff constantly brings light into any room that he is in, along with a positive and comical spin on any situation. Jeff's can-do attitude is infectious, and he can motivate anyone that's in his presence. I would personally like to say that Jeff is just genuinely a good person. He loves his family and keeps his guiding light towards his core values of justice, mercy, and walking humbly. And it is my pleasure to congratulate you, Jeff, on achieving tenure. It is my pleasure to introduce right now Ms. Lisa Howard, Supervisor of World Languages and ESL.
Hi, I'd like to invite Ilkay Ozdemir up to the podium. And special friend, guest, Chloe. Hi. Ilkay has been an absolute positive addition to the World Language Department over the past 4 years. Believe it or not, she came to us with no high school teaching experience and quickly and successfully acclimated to working with high school students. I recall, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember an early conversation with you explaining to you how the bells ring and students need passes to go to the bathroom. So you quickly acclimated to our high school community. Ilkay is always full of energy and has excitement for trying new things in her classroom. She works diligently with her colleagues to ensure the best possible learning experience for her students. This summer, or actually last spring, I went to Ilkay nervous because I needed someone to teach AP French. And I said, would you like to teach AP French for the first time? And she said, sure, why not? And then in the beginning of this year, I said, how's it going? She said, I don't know, everyone's so worked up. This is so easy. So hopefully that we keep that up. Ilkay co-advises the French Club and French Honor Society, where she works closely with students to promote an interest in Francophone culture. She is always prepared and engaged with our department's work and is a warm, smiling, supportive colleague. On behalf of the World Language Department, it is my honor to recognize Ilkay in achieving tenure. I would now like to introduce Dr. Robert Mcgarry, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction.
So good evening and congratulations to all honorees, and thank you for the countless ways that you have touched and improved the lives of hundreds of children and young people on the journey to this moment. I'm pleased to recognize somebody who was previously recognizing others and invite Gita Faria to join me. So I'm so pleased to recognize Gita Faria on having earned tenure last fall as our Supervisor of Science. Along with earning tenure, Ms. Faria earned a lengthened title and now serves as Supervisor of Science, Engineering, and Gifted and Talented. Ms. Faria's contributions to our school district have been many, and not just in the content area she supervises, but in our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts as well, where she often raises her hand to take a lead role. Ms. Faria is an innovative leader and a leader who sows the seeds of innovation with faculty and students. And whether it be in science, robotics, culinary arts, woodshop, or the teaching of auto shop during a global pandemic, she is highly adept at defining both problems and opportunities and developing strategies to overcome or take advantage of these. She is highly regarded by staff throughout our district and for her leadership and her willingness to do whatever it takes to meet students' needs. Her support and hands-on work with teachers helped us get through a most challenging period and context for teaching in general and the continuity of science learning in particular. Gita Faria is known by all as a kind, thoughtful, intelligent, driven, sensitive, reflective, and highly capable person. I am grateful that she is part of our team and for the daily contributions she makes to our district. Gita, congratulations on this public recognition of the tenure that you received last November. And it's my privilege to welcome back to the podium Dr. Joan Mass, Superintendent of Schools.
So to recognize the principals this evening, where would we be without our principals? They are the leaders of their school communities and partners with parents. They are cheerleaders for their students and teachers, sometimes their superintendent. They are instructional experts, problem solvers, and peacemakers. Schools would not work without them. Their work is significant and celebrated by the entire community. This is your month. However, every day of the year, we know how amazing you are. Thank you for all that you do.
So at this time, I'm going to read two resolutions, one for the tenured faculty and staff and one for the principals. I'll start with the faculty. Whereas the mission of the Scotch Plains Fanwood Public Schools is to educate and empower our community of individual learners to be successful citizens of the world. And whereas the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education will always expect exceptional performance by staff and will always hire only the most qualified candidates and will promote the maximum performance and achievement of every student and staff member. And whereas the district has 38 teachers and support staff deserving of tenure in the Scotch Plains Fanwood Public Schools this year. Now therefore be it resolved that the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education recognizes and congratulates these newly tenured teachers, administrators, support staff, and offers our support for best wishes as they continue to diligently work with our students and their peers in the Scotch Plains Fanwood Public Schools. And now the principals. Whereas the National Association of Secondary School Principals and the National Association of Elementary School Principals, along with the Senate and General Assembly of the State of New Jersey, have declared this month, October 2022, as National Principals Month. And whereas the National Principals Month is an appropriate time to recognize the essential role that principals play in preparing today's students for the challenges of tomorrow. And whereas the principals fulfill important roles as educators, visionaries, instructional leaders, and community builders, while demonstrating uncommon dedication to furnishing their students with a positive support system that fosters academic and intellectual development. And whereas, in addition, principals establish the academic tone for their schools by collaborating with teachers to implement and maintain high curriculum standards, develop mission statements, and set performance goals and objectives that result in educational excellence. And whereas school principals are responsible for the safety of their students and staff and the security of their school, principals set high standards providing the support students need in order for them to develop and achieve at a high level. Whereas each principal is responsible for fostering a dynamic partnership between the community and the school in order to create a positive learning environment for students. And whereas the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education recognizes and appreciates the skills and commitment of the Scotch Plains Fanwood principals and celebrates their dedication to our students and their families and our community of learners. Now therefore be it resolved that the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education recognizes and commends the contributions of our school principals, Dr. David Heisey, Dr. Jocelyn Dumaresque, Dr. Kevin Holloway, Dr. Scott Bortnick, Sandra Fati, Erin Mullman, Dr. Sasha Slocum, and Justin Fiore for their continued service to our children. Congratulations. Can I have a motion to accept the resolutions? Thank you, Mr. Murray. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Winkler. Mr. Jones, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Boroff? Yes. Mr. Murray? Yes. Ms. Bauer? Yes. Ms. Brody? Yes. Mrs. Mitchell? Yes. Ms. Suriani? Yes. Ms. Williams? Yes. Ms. Winkler? Yes. Dr. Kolkowski?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Dr. Mast?
And now we'd like to invite all of our newly tenured staff and principals up for a picture, please.
Can I have a motion to go from this public meeting into our executive session? Thank you, Mr. Murray, and the second was Mrs. Williams. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we're in exec. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming. Congratulations. Good evening. Welcome back to the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education regular public meeting. Today is October 20th, 2022. We were already in public and said our Pledge of Allegiance and took our roll call as we had the recognition of the newly tenured staff and the annual recognition of National Principals Month. So we're picking up with the regular meeting. Just prior to coming out here, we held our executive session. During executive session, we did the personnel report, we discussed the HIB review, we discussed the suspension and detention report, and the legal status report. At this time, we have one addition to the agenda. We have 16 BUS, the 2022-2023 parent transportation contracts. At this time, Dr. Mass, you have a superintendent's report?
I would just like to reiterate how wonderful it was to celebrate our newly tenured teachers and to recognize our principals for all of the good work that they do every day.
Thank you, Dr. Mass. Mr. Jones, do we have a business administrator's report?
I'm going to defer my time to the committee update for finance facilities.
Okay, Mr. Jones, thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Board of Education offices located at 512 Cedar Street, Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Such notice was also provided in written notice and forwarded to the Union County Hawk, the Star Ledger, the Township Clerk of Scotch Plains, and the Borough Clerk of Fanwood in the revised annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings as adopted April 28, 2022. At this time, we will have public comment. In accordance with the Scotch Plains Fanwood Public School Bylaws 0164 and 0165, the meeting will be open for 15 minutes for public comments. Maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers addressing the superintendent items, business functions, and other board business will be heard first. If time remains, speakers may address other matters. So if you'd like to make a public comment, please come down here to the podium to make your public comment. Seeing no one, I'm going to close this portion of the meeting and move on to the committee reports. Does anybody have a committee report this evening? Mrs. Soriani.
Thank you. The curriculum committee met, Okay. The curriculum committee met on October 11th. We discussed several things that are on the agenda for board approval tonight. Regarding course updates and course name changes. The first is the revised course proficiencies for AP Statistics, which did not reflect any major changes, only adjustments in sequencing and reorganization based on NJ student learning standards. Second item is a new course proposal that's recommended for approval, a course in commercial design. It will be a half-year course focused on career readiness standards and how to use graphic art professionally, such as packaging, branding, logo design. So creating opportunities for students for career development and exploration and practical skills. The third item we discussed were a few course name changes that are on the agenda for approval. The first two are in the visual arts department. Computer-aided graphics, which was a semester-long course, a proposed name change is graphic design, and the course is going to change in that it will be a full-year course allowing for further study and more intensive study and application of the 4 Adobe applications, 1 per marking period. And the second name change in arts is Intro Advanced Digital Photography. Will go to Intro Advanced Digital Design. And that's because the course title is more accurate about the course content. It's not solely focused on photography, but focused on digital design programs. Another course name change is Dramatic Literature and the Actor. The proposed name will be Acting with Dramatic Literature. And the reason for this course name change is that first, the title is more inviting to students as well as being more accurate, because acting is actually more prominent in this course than the reading literature component. Okay. We also discussed a plan to update the district guidelines on when a student, how do I say this? When a student does not meet the age requirement for first grade, but family requests that the student move forward. So current district guidelines are that a student be 6 on or before October 1st to enter first grade. And when a parent feels that a student should move forward outside of these guidelines, there is an intensive process in place. The district is going to examine the process to fine-tune it and potentially add student assistance specialists to this process. Currently, a committee of staff members convenes to assess the child's strengths in such areas as social development and literacy and academic skills. The student will start in kindergarten, but then will be observed in the classroom and given a series of tasks and assessments using our current curriculum, such as Everyday Math and Teaching Strategies Gold. And then based on the skills and the results of the assessments, a recommendation meeting is held. So it's a quick process so that the student is able to move forward into first grade, should that be the decision. But we're looking to fine-tune this process. So this is just informational. And the last item that the committee discussed was preliminary results of the district assessment report. Our committee was able to review the aggregate data of the NJSLA, student learning maps test, and access for ELLs. And we were able to look at data compared to state data, as we normally do, and also compared to SPF in 2018-2019, which allowed us to assess any learning loss and the impact of COVID. Results showed that SPF surpassed and outperformed state averages in all scores and reflected minimal shift in all areas. And then the results were broken down by demographics, such as gender and ethnic and racial groups, to determine any performance gaps that need to be addressed. The data, as we always do, we share out district testing results. It will be shared out in a presentation during an instructional update at a date to be determined. And as usual, we will take a deeper dive into the subgroups and determine any performance gaps and any needs related to that in the future. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Soriani. Any questions? Okay, is there any other report?
Yeah, I have a combination finance.
Mrs. Brody, go right ahead.
So we, oh, is this better? Sorry. Better, I hope this is better. So we had the Potter's architects at our meeting to discuss the different options you can get with the basic modulars that we had previously discussed. And some of the different options are the ceiling height, and also things like whether it's metal versus wood walls in the modulars. There are boring tests being done in each of the proposed locations as we speak. We discussed the demographer's report and the expected increase of students in the schools. Due to the fact that we already have at capacity at the elementary schools, we are looking to work on the elementary schools first and then possibly the middle schools. We are firming up costs because the reason for the discussion on the different options was because the initial costs we got were on the basic models, but some of these upgrades are more of a necessity than and for safety reasons than for trying to save money. So we're going to firm up the pricing, and then we're going to make a decision from there. We also discussed board resolutions, and that the state is asking for different wording on some resolutions for state aid, and that we'll be revoting on some resolutions. We're having a partner meeting this Friday. And also, we discussed the football game operations debrief, and they are evaluating the current operation for game days. And with the increase in attendance, the administration is looking into the best practices for site management and other improvements to ensure smooth events moving forward. And that concludes the report.
Thank you, Mrs. Brody. Any questions?
I was just
Mrs.
wondering
Soriani?
thank you, whether we can all receive a copy of the demographer report?
Oh, yeah. That's a Christopher question.
It's over 100 pages. I have some summaries I put together. I
That'd be
can
wonderful.
forward those out, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mrs. Soriani. And Mrs. Brody, that completes your
Yeah,
reports?
that completes the report.
Okay, are there any other reports to come forward? No other reports, then we'll move on to letter to the board. One email was received from the public. The appropriate administrator responded. Next, board motions. Dr. Mass, Superintendent's report.
So for 3S, I move that the board approves the listed field trips. For 4S, I ask that the board acknowledges the receipt of the October 15th enrollment numbers. For 5S, I move that the board approves the listed out-of-district tuition costs for the listed students. And for 6S, move that the board approves the listed curriculum revisions. For 7S, move that the Board of Education approves the revisions to the Student Code of Conduct on 2 pages. And that concludes the report.
Thank you, Dr. Mast. Do we have we need a roll call vote now. Mr. Jones, will you please call the roll? Oh, excuse me, can we have a motion to accept Dr. Mast's
So
report?
moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Brody. Second. Thank you, Mrs. Winkler, as a second. Any other question or discussion? Mr. Jones, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Brody?
Yes.
Ms. Winkler?
Yes.
Sorry. Ms. Boroff?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Ms. Bauer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Soriani?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Dr. Polkowski?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Dr. Mast. Personnel report, Dr. Mast.
I move that the board approves the superintendent's recommendations for personnel as discussed this evening in exec.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Soriani. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Any question or discussion? Mr. Jones, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Soriani?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Bauer?
Yes.
Ms. Boroff?
Yes.
Ms. Brody?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Winkler?
Yes.
Dr. Kolakowski?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you again, Dr. Mast. That brings us to the business report. Mr. Jones?
Number 1 is staff training. Related services. Number 2, special education related services. Number 3 is previous. Number 4 is previous. Number 5, previous. Number 6, previous. Number 7 is the tentative budget calendar. Again, those are the key dates there are March and April, and those are tentative dates that'll be approved by the state at a later time. Number 8 is a standard report we do every year, just as how much we've spent on maintenance on our buildings. Number 9 is speech services. Number 10 is fire drills. Number 11 is postponed. Our treasurer did not finish the report. Number 12 is disbursement listings. 13 is paying our bills. 14 is a sidebar, and it is a continuation of a sidebar we had last year. Number 15 is approving the theater vendor. And number 16 is a parental transportation contract for special education students.
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the starred items, including the addition of 16 BUS?
So moved.
I think we had Mrs. Boroff as the mover, and the seconder will be Mrs. Winkler. Any further question or discussion on the business items? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jones. That brings us to policies. Mrs. Winkler?
Yes, I have a policy report.
Mike, please.
Yes, I have a policy report. The policy committee met on October 13th. Policies we discussed, changes to policy 1511, Board of Education website accessibility. This policy has been revised to be compliant with New Jersey Statute 18A 36-35.1. Much of the required changes were already in place on our district website. We're just updating the policy to match. These changes are mandated. Policy 2415, Every Student Succeeds Act. The policy has been revised to reflect recently updated policies 2415.04 and 2415.50 concerning parent and family engagement. These changes are mandated for schools that receive Title I funding. Policy 5513 and the corresponding regulation, care of school property. The policy has been revised to update language and include an updated legal citation. New Jersey Administrative Code 6A 23-6.6 was moved to New Jersey Administrative Code 6A 23A-20. This code section addresses the school district's right to reimbursement for damaged, lost, or destroyed textbooks loaned to a student. There are also several minor revisions to the language. In addition, the regulation has been revised to include an updated process used to assess and collect textbook fines. The schedule of fines included in E1 of the regulation has been removed, and the schedule is now addressed in C8 of the regulation, indicating fines may be assessed for lost and damaged textbooks in accordance with the schedule as approved by the superintendent or designee, and these policy and regulation are both mandated. We also talked about policy 5722, student journalism, which is going to replace, instead of policies 2432, school-sponsored publications and the regulations that go with that. Public Law 2021 C309 was recently signed into law and codified at NJSA 18A 36-44 and NJSA 18A 36-45. The new statutes require school districts to adopt a written policy concerning student freedom of expression in accordance with the provisions of the new statutes. This includes definitions, indicates a student journalist has the right to exercise freedom of speech and of the press in school-sponsored media, provides student expression that is not protected expression by a student journalist, includes a process school officials must follow when it is believed the student expression in school-sponsored media is not protected, and provides an appeal process of a school official's decision restraining student expression. In accordance with the new statutes, the superintendent or designee shall determine reasonable provisions for the time, place, and manner of student expression for the purposes of school-sponsored media. Schools continue to have the right to determine the time, place, and manner of school-sponsored media, as these provisions are locally determined and are unique to each school district's student media program. Many of the provisions in the new statutes are already addressed in our current policy and the corresponding regulation. However, now that New Jersey statutes address school-sponsored publications and student journalists, the new policy supersedes these. Most of the information included in policy 2432 was incorporated into the new policy, and these changes are also mandated. So at this time, I am asking the board to approve final reading and adoption of policy 0143.2, policy 2425, and the corresponding regulation 2425, as well as a first reading of policy 1511, policy 2415, policy 5513, and the corresponding regulation, and policy 5722, as well as, do we abolish them now, or is that first reading for their abolishment?
Is it for the first readings, or?
Well, for the two policies that we're abolishing because we're replacing them, is that like a first reading that we're going to adopt the one policy and abolish the others? Or do we just abolish those policies at this time?
I'm not sure. I'd have to.
Yeah, I'd have to check your bylaws to be sure. Again, the first reading, second reading process is just a function of Robert's Rules of Order and your own bylaws. There's no actual law that requires you to do a first or second reading of anything. I would say that if we're replacing specific policy, for example, school-sponsored publications is being abolished because we're instituting student journalism, that until the new policy is enacted, I would not abolish the old policy. So because it's only
Okay.
first reading of one, we shouldn't abolish the old
So
one.
kind
until
of
the
a
new one's
first
written.
reading that we're
Makes
going
sense.
to abolish those policies.
Right.
Sort of. Okay. All right. So I made the motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Any question or discussion on one POL or two POL? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Winkler.
Thank you.
Is there any new board business?
Hang on.
Seeing none? Other board business, 1 OBB, any liaison reports?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Borf. Which one are you reporting on?
CPAG, Special Education
Oh.
Parent Advisory Group.
Go right ahead.
So we met on Tuesday and the data, or Monday night, the data skipping my, not sitting with me. But we really, this was the first meeting with the full, the liaisons in place with all of the positions in place. So we sort of got a really good overview and update, reviewed all of the logistics. There are currently 22 school liaisons. They are looking for more always. And really, we went over some of the policies and how, things included, how often we would have meetings with admin, or not we, I'm sorry, the CPAG board. And then the overall review of their bylaws, the positions, what it entails to be a school liaison, and then took a look at their goals for moving forward. The next meeting is Monday, November 7th at 7 p.m. Again, it's in the boardroom at the board offices, and it's also virtual. I would say that it's really exciting to see this group coming together and just in conversation. The purpose of this group is so parents can come together and have opportunities to engage with each other, help one another, as well as working with the district. And so I personally am seeing that happen. We had a lot of new parents that came this week, and really were really appreciative to have the resources available to them through other parents. So again, Special Education Parent Advisory Group, and the next meeting is Monday, November 7th.
Thank you, Mrs. Boroff. Are there any other liaison reports?
Have a report from for Garden State Coalition of Schools.
Go right ahead, Mrs. Bauer.
And there was a meeting on Wednesday. The guest speaker was Dr. Lily Edwards. She had was invited back. She had presented last year. She talked about, she's the president, among many other things, is currently the head of the Amistad Commission. And so she talked about the Amistad legislation. She talked about models of inclusive educational excellence and district school implementation. And she is always excellent. So that's just a brief mention of the topics that we talked about. In terms of the legislation that's going on right now, there's legislation that's looking at new requirements, changes for school counselor certification, and related to the roles and duties of school counselors. So that's one to keep on the radar. There's another one that is, it says requires the State Board of Education to evaluate historical events for inclusion in New Jersey student learning standards, but people aren't quite sure what exactly they mean by that or plan to include. So that's another one for the radar. And another one is related to preschool placements and requirements possibly about how many can be placed in what kinds of settings. There's a lot of discussion around changes that the Murphy administration announced for regional, replacing existing school-based youth service programs with a regional student mental health hubs. I think certainly as far as Garden State members are concerned, they prefer to keep that school-based. Then there's a lot going on with a bill related to school construction, and there are a lot of red flags and conversation about various pieces of that and what the implications would be. So those are just a few of the things that are happening down in Trenton.
Well, thank you for attending that meeting, Mrs. Bauer.
Yes, and we had several people there, so.
You want what?
Huh?
I didn't hear you.
We had several people who attended, so.
Okay, very good.
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend last month's meeting of Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, and I did not receive the minutes yet, so in November, I will do a comprehensive update.
Thank you, Mrs. Soriani. Any other reports? Seeing none, 2OEB, request to attend workshops or workshop reports. And none of those, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes. We have minutes here from September 21st, both the executive session and the regular board meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Bauer. Is there any question or discussion about those minutes? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. And that brings us to public comment. In accordance with the Scotch Plains Fanwood Public School Bylaw 0164-0165, the meeting will be open for 15 minutes for public comments. Maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers addressing the superintendent items, business functions, and other board business will be heard first. If time remains, speakers may address other matters. Speakers, if you'd like to make a comment, please come to the podium, state your full name and the town in which you reside. Please note, board members should not be approached. In addition, the board members cannot respond regarding concerns of individual students or staff members. Such matters should be addressed with the superintendent's office. So if you'd like to make a comment, please come to the podium at this time. Seeing no one, I'm going to close this portion of the meeting. Thank you.
We can hear you.
Right, okay. Real quick, I was at a Scotch Plains Council meeting this week, and a wonderful senior citizen brought up an interesting point that I never really thought about, the impact on our schools, that they currently have approved up to 5 cannabis dispensaries in Scotch Plains. And thinking back, I remember vaping was a really big problem before the pandemic, and somehow it's disappeared. I don't know if it's not a problem now, or compared to the pandemic, it's a minuscule problem. I don't know what the story is, but like when my son was in 2018, he attested to plenty of smoke and stuff in the bathrooms. I don't know if there's anything that can be done to alert when there's smoke in the bathrooms or something like that. I just imagine with cannabis becoming legal, this is going to become a bigger and bigger problem. And maybe we can repurpose 50 to be a drug sniffing dog. I don't know. But again, recent research suggests that smoking high-potency marijuana every day can increase the chances of developing psychosis by nearly 5 times compared to people who have never smoked marijuana. It's also known to lower IQs, which again is not going to bode well for test scores. So I just want to make everybody aware that this is happening, and I think we got to prepare in advance, and maybe even have a voice at these meetings where these things are getting approved. That hey, this might have an impact on our kids. And another thing coming up, there's a pilot agreement meeting for Carano Square in Fanwood on November 21st. Again, I don't know if a member of the Board of Ed goes to those things as a liaison to kind of speak to the fact that, pilot programs shut out, the school budget completely. Nothing goes to the schools. So I think it's important that maybe we have a voice in these things, and maybe somebody would be able to attend these meetings and kind of speak on behalf of the schools that, hey, we're at capacity. It's going to get really crazy when we start adding a bunch more kids to the schools.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Morris. Any other public comment at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close this portion of the meeting. And Dr. Mass, if you'd like to make a comment?
Just a brief comment. The topics that were just brought forward are things that we do discuss with the municipalities in our partner meetings.
Thank you, Dr. Mast. Our upcoming scheduled meetings are Thursday, November 17th, regular public meeting in the administration building. 8 p.m. will be the public portion. Thursday, December 15th, regular public meeting, again in the administration building, and 8 p.m. for the public portion. Are there any remarks for the good of the order? Mrs. Soriani.
Yeah, I just want to again congratulate all the newly tenured teachers that put so much work into instructing our children every day. Congratulations to them and their families. And I also want to just, I guess, looking forward, I want to announce that next week a few of us are going to the New Jersey School Board Association convention, and I know I'm going, and I'm really looking forward to attending a lot of the sessions and bringing back some wonderful ideas in workshop reports, ideas that others share that we can bring back to our district.
Thank you, Mrs. Soriani. Any other comments? Mrs. Winkler.
Thank you. Yeah, this past weekend, I had the pleasure of volunteering for 4 Centuries in a Weekend. The Shady Rest is part of the 4 Centuries in a Weekend now, and so there were all kinds of great festivities there. Back in the day, it was a full-on country club, and they had horseback riding, so there were horses there giving line-led rides, and there was a small jazz band there performing in the ballroom, and there were presentations about the history of Shady Rest, as well as tours going through the John Shippen Museum that's there. There was a lot going on, and it was just beautiful, and so I encourage everyone that next year, when 4 Centuries in a Weekend comes up, to put that on your list of
I'm glad you
places
got
to stop.
to experience it there at the Shady Rest. Yes, I was a follower in Summit at the Twin Maples and the Reeves Reed Arboretum. Then we went on to Vauxhall to see their new library building for the history of the community of Vauxhall, and then on to Cranford, where they're getting ready to reopen the Sperry Observatory, which has been closed all this time on the Union College campus due to the pandemic. We're waiting any day now for the word they're going to reopen it, so the telescopes will be available for free to the public on Friday evenings. Any other comments? Mrs. Bauer?
When I think about how nice the event was this evening for the newly tenured teachers, it reminds me that I want to thank, and I'm sure we all do, all the mentors who helped guide all those teachers. You know, I know we have a great mentor program, and you know, it takes a lot of support to help teachers be successful. And to work with them so that they, you know, want to stay in teaching, which we want them to do. And the other thing, I just wanted to thank the PTA for doing the forum last evening, the candidate forum. I appreciate them organizing that, and the League of Women Voters as well. And the election is before our next meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Bauer. Any other comments for the good of the order? We've had plenty tonight, all good. Okay, then, if there's no more comments to be made, I'd like to entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Boroff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're in adjournment. Thank you, everyone.
So when you're